to this novel and decided to make a movie out of it?
Yeah, I just fell in love with the novel. I think is the simplest way. I found it incredibly touching and heartbreaking and tragic, but kind of filled with some element of hope, at least in the character and his kind of struggle and his journey. And I couldn't put it down, and I felt like it said something kind of truthful about what people need and how society and family often don't help the people they should be helping.
So in the sense that because at first it seems that it's mostly kind of love story between horse and boy, but as you said, it is also a kind of political story about the society in general, and that the fact that sometimes it doesn't provide the resources needed for a young adult.
Yeah. I mean, definitely for me, that's the deep tragedy of it, is that he was a really good kid, a kind, good kid, and he's under very difficult circumstances, and he does not have people there to support him. And sometimes people can't support him. Families can be difficult. You can have no money, but in that state you want society to step in, and he was a boy that's been abandoned essentially by everybody.
But at the same time, it seems to me that maybe my understanding, he's also the boy that does not care too much about his family, or when his father died, he left the hospital very quickly and not necessarily showed too much affections to what was happening around him. So he seems to be very individualistic at the same time. I don't know.
I think also it's an inability to be able to deal with that emotional state, and I see the character as kind of in order for him to survive, he has to bury pain, bury the emotion to keep moving forward. There's always, if he stops at any of that point, what's going to happen to him? He's going to crumble. He's going to, who's going to look after him? I think he feels like he's got to keep moving forward, and I think it's only and he keeps doing that until he gets to the very end, and then he realizes he can stop and he can feel the grief that he's been suppressing.
So in this sense, it's not only a love story between boy and the horse. It's a story for the boy to discover who he is and his capacity. Because in fact, after the death of even the horse, he did not show too much affection. He just left the place and go to find his own finality.
Yeah, I think he does. I think he is devastated by the events that happen. But again, I think it's about he has to move on, and I think it's there is nothing that can there's nothing he can do apart from keep going forward. That's how he sees it. He just has to keep struggling, keep fighting forward.
And to create this story, what kind of research did you do? Did you, for example, go to the racetracks to look at, for example, the horse in action?
Yeah, I spent a long time. I spent 4 months while I was writing the script. I went to hang out with the writer of the novel. I went to racetracks, travelled around to county fairs that you see in the film, and then I went on driving. I did the route that Charlie does to Denver, so I drove to Denver from Portland and just stayed in motels and went camping and just ate in lots of diners and just tried to see. I mean, I'm not doing what Charlie's doing, clearly. I'm in a car and he's walking with a horse, trying to experience or feel a little bit of that world.
Okay, and about the location and the settings that you picked for the movies, where the idea for them comes from? It was from the novels, or is it you personally through your observation and journey that picked them?
It's a bit of both. It's from the novel, definitely. A lot of the location, the racetrack is the racetrack in the novel, and even the diner he goes to on the road is the exact diner that's mentioned in the novel. So I tried to stick to a lot of what was in that book. Willy, who wrote it, knew that world very well and had travelled around and knew all that area, so I tried to stick clear with that. And authenticity of location is very important to me, so I definitely try and find the right most truthful places that we can shoot.
Okay. And when you talk about this whole process, I'm very curious also about the castings and the method that you use, because I realized that the main actors, the boy, had some previous experience But what was the quality in him that you thought that might be useful for this role, and in general about the acting, if you have some comments?
Yeah, I mean, I thought he was incredible. He sent a tape in, and he did something very unusual in the tape. It just really, a lot of younger actors are very good at emoting in a certain traditional way, but he brought something interesting and fascinating to the scene he did, and that's what I want when I see an actor. I don't need to know exactly what they're thinking. I want to know that something is happening and something interesting is happening, and I want to be interested by that. And he's also a very sensitive actor. There's a lot of subtlety that he does, and he can do things with a look and with just like a move of his eye, and that is just the kind of acting that I like, and I respond to that. And especially the way I shoot things, I like to just rest on them and watch them and let their body language kind of tell elements of the story, and so I thought he was fantastic for that.
So in this sense, you want to argue that you're mostly looking for the actors that show some uniqueness in their characters, or for example with their language, with their face, eyes, something that could make them different compared to ordinary people that we see in the street. Is it this kind of actors that you are looking?
I mean, it can be just someone that's in the street. I think there's just I like to be able to I just like actors that are giving me something unique, and and makes you want to look at them and focus on them and try and understand them. I my films are not about a character saying this is who I am, understand me. It's about I want the audience to want to lean in to try and understand these characters.
Oh, okay. In this sense, for example, the actors might express or dialogue or could more. In a unique way is more interesting for you, that actor that can, for example, memorize and dialogues and can explain them or express them. So the uniqueness of emotionality is something that you are looking mostly for.
Absolutely, and also that can be quite challenging. It doesn't have to be an obvious emotional thing that they're giving the audience. I want the audience to be challenged. I want the audience to try and understand them, and I think they need to be unique in order for that to happen.
Okay, and one of the biggest challenges working with kids is that sometimes kid behaves like, for example, somebody of old, somebody of, for example, 30 or 40, the kids of 50. Did you have this concern in mind, for example, to not let the kids, for example, over exaggerate?
Exactly. I mean, Charlie's he's a very understated actor, so that's why it was so perfect, I think, for the type of film that we were making, and he knew exactly the tone of what the movie was and fitted in very well within that tone. But there are actors that go big and large, and then there are others that keep it contained. And for me, Charlie is keeping everything contained. His emotions, his understanding of himself, everything is buried deep, and so you need an actor that can do that.
And I think the other great actor in the movie is the horse. Without the horse, the whole movie maybe had no sense or meaning. So I'm very curious to know if you can say a little bit about working with the horse.
I mean, we cast the horse. We met 3 different horses, and when I first saw that horse, I knew that was the one. I don't know why. You just feel some kind of connection, I suppose. And he was great. He was wonderful. I mean, he was very well trained, and we had amazing trainers that looked after the horse and cared for the horse, and so it was actually quite simple. There was never. It's challenging because it's a horse, and it was challenging when we had other horses there, and you have racing and all that kind of thing. You have to be very incredibly careful, and they become the focus of the attention when you're working. But it was pretty straightforward.
I remember that Bresson wants to have a donkey for his famous movie. He looked for an unprofessional donkey because he thought that professional donkeys could cause problem for the movie. I'm just curious if you had the same kind of concern, or did you look at it for a professional? He
was. I don't think he'd done a film before, so I think he was a non-professional horse, but they trained him professionally. I think for something like this, especially now, you don't want the horse to ever be injured or hurt, so you want to make sure that horse can be trained to avoid any injury. And so they did, a fantastic job with that. I can imagine that Bresson would definitely want a non-acting horse to play, or pony to play his donkey.
That happens between the horse and the cars. Is it CGV?
It's a complex combination of the two. So it was a difficult shot to do. But there is some. I mean, we didn't really hit a horse. There's no horse was injured in the thing. But it was I wanted the shot to feel real and not to feel honest and authentic. But it was a tremendously difficult shot to do. We shot it at sunset, so we did it 3 times. That was it, or something like that. So we had very little. We rehearsed it, and it was a complicated shot. And there was obviously some CG elements to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how you made the horse run away suddenly?
I don't want to give away the secrets. But there's elements of it that get taken out. CG element. So the horse was never in any danger. Let's put it that way.
Yes. No, I'm just because that accident scenes. I think it's very beautifully shot.
Yeah.
So
basically you do it, but there was a rider on the horse the whole time.
Okay.
And then you take the rider off in post-production.
Okay. And this movie, as we argued, is about love between human and an animal. For that perspective, did you make the research about, for example, the humans that will have some connection with their animals, their behaviors?
Not really, because I suppose in the end for me more is it's a story about a boy needing love from somebody. He's needing to he needs to be cared for, and he needs to care about somebody else. And in the end, he's looking for his aunt, but he would like that to have been his dad, or he'd like that to be his mum, but he's desperate for that. And Pete becomes a way for him to care for something, and a way for a connection to happen within the story. In the end, it's not. He needs something bigger than that. He needs a family, essentially. So to me, it's less about a boy and a horse, and it's more about a boy desperately needing love.
Mm-hmm. And in the press note, there is too many reference to John Steinbeck.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you can say more about the connection between this work and his novels.
Yeah, I think that Willy, when he wrote the book, he had a quote by John Steinbeck at the beginning, and there was just and I just loved that quote more than anything about what it said about the world.
Yeah.
That we, I can't remember what the exact quote is, but it is that we are ugly and we make mistakes and we argue and we fight and, we lack compassion, all those things, but we are also more than that. And I think it was very important to me that his novels are very humane and compassionate about his characters, and Willy's novel was the same, and I wanted to do the same thing with this. It's like, these aren't always good people in the story, but I want you to try and understand why they make the choices that they make. So whether it's the dad not being a great dad, or people not being there for Charlie, they are trying, but their lives are hard and harsh.
Yeah, I remember the crime scenes when happenings. Nothing happens to the murderer, and it seems that the writers, and you as a filmmakers, were not much interested to show the reason behind or the motives, and to go to the psychology and put any blame on anything.
No, that there was numerous other stories that could be told around the thing, but for us it was about focusing on Charlie, and Charlie just is just like pushing forward, so he doesn't have time to think about those things.
Yeah, and one other aspect of the story is that sometimes you see that you encounter with some scenes in the movie. For example, you see the father with the girl in his house, and the boy was sitting, and he thought that this story is going to have to say something about the relationship between this father and this girl, but suddenly you
don't see her again.
Anything. Yes, just the information, like ordinary things that happening. And you didn't try to, for example, put aside any of them. It appears that you think that they are necessary for narrative development. They say something about the...
Yeah, exactly. To me, they say something about character. They say something about the world of Charlie's life, that people come into his life and they disappear from his life. His dad sees all kinds of women. He's always having women around, but they never become the mother. They always disappear. So I think it's about, for me, in stories, I want there to be scenes that you're not even entirely sure why they're there, but they do actually say something about the character, which to me is far more truthful about real life. Real life is not plotted. Things happen, and then something else happens, and then someone comes into your life, and then they disappear from your life, and that feels more honest to me. And I like the way that the story kind of plays around with the genre and what you think it's going to be, and you think it might be a story about a boy in a racetrack, and then it becomes something else, or you think it's about a boy and his dad, and it becomes something else.
Yeah. And I'm also very interested in the connection that you made, that you think is existing between this work and your previous work. For example, The Weekend, or because there are some themes that appears to me that are repeating. For example, the question of loneliness or friendship seems to be very essential in your...
Yeah, very essential. I think it's like, we are all essentially alone. Our lives are based around trying to not be alone and finding ways to, comfort ourselves and comfort others. And I think that's what we all want, most of us. I mean, it's not everybody, but most people do. And you're reaching out trying to find that. So I think Weekend, 45 Years, they are definitely dealing in different ways with the nature of being alone in the world and trying to understand how you can make it better for yourself.
And the other striking elements in cinematography in your work, and especially the images that you made with I'm curious if you can say a little bit about your camera.
Yeah, I mean, I spent a long time trying to work out the visual style of the film and how it's going to move and how it's going to feel. And 45 years the camera doesn't move at all, and the camera moves more. And it's just about trying. I get obsessed by working out what the ratio needs to be, and we do tests on exactly how it should be, and the lenses and the style and everything. It's all very important to me, and it's blocking, especially when you don't cut that much. I don't cut that much. Blocking and the way that the camera covers the dance of the camera with that blocking is so fundamental to the telling of the story. So, I spent a long time with the DP, talking about references, talking about looking at photography, just discussing things about trying to work out the visual style. So for your
cinematography, that you mean that you, for example, had clear idea before about the kind of images that you want to have?
Yeah, I don't like make it up on the day, and I never have done. Same with Weekend and 45 Years. You're trying to go for a very kind of naturalistic style of cinematography, but actually it takes if you're not going to cut much, each shot has to be thought about precisely. You have to work out how you're going to get the information you need and create the right emotional tone without cutting into a close-up or without cutting to a cutaway. So it takes me for me a lot of thought into trying to get that right.
So you have a kind of notebooks in which you draw, for example, every scene?
Yeah, I don't do storyboards, but I definitely do, because I want to keep something fresh, and I also find storyboards distracting because you've drawn it and then it's never quite the same. But I definitely do blocking diagrams, and I work out with the DP what angles and what we're going to shoot. Yeah.
And I'm also very interested to know more about the music, the sound, especially in the landscapes, if you can say.
Yeah, so it's about sound is incredibly important to me. The sound design. We had a great sound designer on this who did 45 Years as well, and you're creating the camera is quite objective, the way we shoot things, and you want the sound. I like the sound to be more subjective, in almost like contrast to the visual sometimes. And so we spend a long time finding the right winds and sounds of traffic and all those kind of things. And to me, the sound design is music, and then there is some score in this, but it's quite sparse, the score that we use, and it all has to feel to me that it fits into the environment. And then there's some songs that appear on the radio, or the final song that I chose very early on, that I knew I wanted them to be the right kind of the right music for the piece.
And the other transition that I see in this movie is compared to your past work. You worked with two professional actors, Charlie Plummer and the young man. But here you seem more working with less internationally known actor and actress.
Yeah,
How was the transition?
Well, there's a nice combination in this. Obviously, there's Buscemi and Chloe, but Charlie is not particularly known, and there's some smaller roles. And this is one thing that is very different about this story is that it's a much bigger cast. It's Charlie like going through his journey, trying to find connections with different people, whereas my other films have just been very much about, well, really actually one person in a relationship with another person. So it's been, I mean, each project has its own, like, you know, casting decisions, and, you know, yeah.